I wonder this is going live now. Man. Okay. So a little bit of background music there just at the very end. So launching this podcast, More Politics. That's what it's called, More Politics. So basically, this is good. Hopefully, I'm not even sure if I'm live on Facebook, YouTube. I think it's YouTube, that's for sure. Facebook, I'm not even sure. I'm a little confused here as to where I'm at with this thing. But here we go. You know, doing the little switching with the little cameras here and there, so I'm trying to get used to this. So one of the things that I wanted to share was this thought that came to mind regarding social awkwardness. You know, how being socially awkward at times, this is a thought that I had today. I'm thinking, how does that happen? Like, you know, I've seen situations where a person is, you know, raising kids, you know, and how does social awkwardness happen? How does it happen to kids? How does it happen? How does it happen? I've seen it develop. You know, a lot of us have grown up with people that, you know, they developed that social awkwardness. And how did that happen? It makes me think. You know, and how it's going, how's it going to be with this, you know, with these things, right? Masks. We got this thing hanging over here. Got this man. You know, a lot of social awkwardness that, in my experience, that I've seen, it's been a lot through isolation. A lot of it has been through different kinds of isolation. It's been through, you know, a person's ability to not interact for whatever reason. You know, trauma that happened in family, things, you know, maybe a youth, a kid that's not involved in sports, could be a disability, could be a lot of things. A lot of times, it could also be overprotection by parents. I've seen that. You know, I used to do some therapeutic work, clinic work, and I've seen where that has played a role, where the parent is overly protective. I've seen that, you know, even in raising my kids, you know, trying to protect them, you know, certain situations that happen in life. And as a parent, you become so protective that it makes you think, what does that really do? And I've seen in doing clinical work, working with a lot of youth, working with a lot of kids and, you know, in youth development and a lot of different things. I've seen with their kids that you could see when they're younger that they're socially awkward. I've seen where, yeah, there's a clinical way, but there's also a contributing factor sometimes of parents. And sometimes if the parent it could be the parents' protection, overprotection, for whatever reason. It could be a traumatic event that happened. I remember when my kids, I was taking them to sports. And my wife and I try to figure out who's going to cover, who's going to be in the soccer field, who's going to be in the different spending the time with the kids in the park. And I've seen, right, with us, there was that battle, who's going to cover. But there were times that we were both doing it, and that was a great thing. Now, I've seen families that there's excuses, and the kid never makes it to the baseball field because the father's working long hours, which happened to me as well. But thank God that my wife liked some sports, so she liked to go to the park every now and then. But I wish we would have done it more. But I also saw when we did not do as many sports, that how it made a difference in our kids not engaging with other people as much. And then we had to push. But also, I, as a father, was very competitive. I was always pushing them hard. and they didn't really want to learn to compete at a higher level. But then even recently, my kids said, Dad, we regret it. We wish we would have been able to listen to you more, because they see the talent that they had. They actually had, myself, I was very athletic, but I saw the potential in trying to build them. But I didn't want to do like Michael Jackson's dad, that was trying to be so hard on the kids, on his kids. Actually, yeah, they made it, but they made it with some trauma, and everybody knows what that is. It's almost like those cheerleading moms, that push their kids so hard that sometimes it just messes them up. I mean, people know what I'm talking about, right? It could mess up kids. Sometimes a parent could push their kids too hard. But then what you have, I think, more is parents that don't push their kids enough. I've seen a lot of that with parents that are just not exposing their kids to different things because of many reasons. They're too busy, whatever it is. And it ends up being that those kids, you see them over time, they become socially awkward. They become completely awkward. And I've seen it at times where it's the parents' contribution because of fears or whatever. Now, these masks, what they have done is that they have been isolating. It's led to not only a family small isolation, it's almost led to societal isolation. And that isolation at times now, I think, is to a point that we have to see what the effects are going to be. What are the effects going to be in the future with this worldwide societal isolation and what that can do to people? Is it going to lead to a lot of social awkwardness that people develop? And I've actually seen that. I've seen people that are very fearful, even people that I know that they've been gotten involved politically so much that they have pushed so much on workplaces and things like that, and even contaminated other staff or persuaded people to a point of the fear of catching coronavirus, to a point that that fear is a problem. It sort of reminds me of a verse in the Bible. How God made us. This verse, powerful verse. It says, this verse is very clear. In Psalms 139, verse 14, it says, I praise you, God, right? I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. So let's break it down a little bit. What does this mean? What does this mean? I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. In other words, there is a respect and fear for what God has made. So in other words, God has made us to be able to respect what he created, right? How he knitted you, right? Another verse says, in your mother's womb. So there is an initial creation that God does in every individual, right? This program is called Moral Politics. For those of you that don't know what it is, what do we do? What's this program about? This is about looking at moral political views. I should have started that, but I'm starting it now. I'm introducing. It's not a sermon specific podcast, but it is talking about social, political views and things like that. Just a variety of different things. But not being ashamed at all about touching what the scriptures say in the moral views that are, even the secular moral views that are healthy, and being critical of those and analyzing of those views that are not healthy. But just to go back to this, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. In other words, there is a design that God has had for you, for all of us, right? But, right? It also says your works are wonderful. So we are looking at the wonder. So when we look at the creation and each and every one of us, we should be thinking, wow, look how complex I am. But guess what happened? Even though after we are created, that's when things happen. After that, you got some kids, unfortunately, that are born with birth defects and things like that. But when you have a kid that, they've done studies on this, right? Studies where an individual can, if they don't get the right love and nurturing and protection before the age of 2, they don't get, even at the age of 1, they get it. That trauma can shape a young person in a tremendous way. And I've seen it even with family where a traumatic event has really shaped someone. And it's led to so many things like bad decision making, drug abuse, you name it, all kinds of things. And so there's always a battle to look at what God created. And you see, the fear that comes in through trauma and these other things, and these things that are happening now, people are very fearful, right? Fear has a way of just changing who we are. You put an animal in a corner and you threaten it, even if it's a skimpy little animal. When it's fearful, it's going to do something. Why? Because trauma has made it different. It's shaped it differently. And so, Satan has a way of taking what God has created, trying to change it up through fear, so that the wonder that God made is no longer there, right? The creative part is there, but fear is almost like a recreation. It's almost like, even though the devil cannot create, he tries to redefine by destruction. He came to steal, kill, and destroy. And so he'll redefine it through things and trauma and things in life and fear and things like that. And unfortunately, things that are happening in the world with governments, putting so much fear, politicizing this virus in a way where there's creative virus, it doesn't really matter. But doing it in a way that creates so much fear within people that it makes no sense. It's almost like we're creating an isolated society. And we look at this. The virus is serious, it's real. I had the virus, I was sick. I know what it's like. I was scared. But I'm looking at the damage that has been done by even the governments in trying to protect people, but also control and politicizing this virus in a way that is infused so much fear in people that it makes you think, is it really about taking care of people? Is it really about caring for people? And it makes me think, I don't think so. I really don't think so, because I've seen the damage that's been done. I saw even on YouTube things people, after I started feeling better when I was sick way last March, I think in April, people that even committed suicide because of them being sick. Things that happened even in Europe. And what was it? A lot of it was the fear. The fear that people had was just incredible. Again, I've seen where, even with my own kids, I've seen it. I have a brother that's done a spectacular job, doing a great job raising, a couple of his daughters. Him and his wife just have a great agreement in just covering, taking them to different places, dancing, whatever. And it's been great. Why? Because they've been I don't think they've been overprotective, but they've been protective just to prevent, giving them the nurture, but also to prevent any kind of situations happening to their daughters. And that's a huge blessing. I've seen so many people that have been traumatized, and so many parents that have been trusting, and unfortunately in family I've seen where people were so trusting and things happen. Some of us send our kids to school and we're thinking kids are going to be fine in school. We think they're going to be fine in some other place, and next thing you know, they either were abused by a teacher, abused by a bully, or they were put down so much, and I'm not saying just physical abuse, sexual abuse, but they've been abused to make, if they did not make the grade, just to feel a certain way. And the wonderful part about being fearfully and wonderfully made goes away. And people go, some people go all their lives with the trauma that they had, and maybe not even getting to a point that they get to experience the power and the esteem and the great things they're supposed to accomplish in life. And a lot of it was because of trauma, because of things that happen in their lives. You know, when Jesus came into ministry, right? He's coming. What did the devil do? The devil, first thing he did was he took Jesus to the wilderness. And in the wilderness, he tempted him. He tempted him through trying to get him to worship him and whatever. But what was that? That was isolation. First, he isolated him, you see? And that's one of the dangers in isolation. And when you're isolated, you know, it can be so terrifying to people that are alone. You know, I've seen that happen. That's why it's so important to you know, I've seen where there's people that I tried as much as possible just to engage them, you know, and it's important that we engage people and not let them be fully isolated, even though some people are hard to deal with. Some people are real tough to deal with. But it's important because, you know, that teaching in the Bible that Satan took Jesus, tempted him, and he tried everything. He tried to go give him material things, try to get him to worship. And it was to worship him for material things, for power, for anything. And so, you know, there are things that happen in life that we fall for. And one of the things that within isolation we fall for many kinds of temptation, whatever it is, sexual temptation, theft, you name it. And even though those things happen, we can get back to a point where, you know, with the right support, that we can try to get back on track. You know, because if we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God made us in a great way, then we can go back. We can try to recoup some of that time by getting the right help, the right treatment, and getting around people to counter some of this isolation and trauma that we went through. You know, I started by saying how it's important to teach kids sports. You know, I once ran a program that taught the difference between getting youth involved in team sports versus individual sports and the difference in what they do. And it is true, when you do an individual sport, it's all on you. So you pretty much have to, you build up the ability yourself to rely on yourself to perform. You're playing tennis, you know, Venus or Serena Williams or whoever, is their performance below, it's on them. But again, in team sports, people can do their role, but the socialization aspect of sports is just incredible. What happens, and it's very difficult for some families, because maybe if their kids are born a certain way, then the choices that they have are much harder, especially in this society. But the thing is, the value of being incorporated, doing something, getting with people, countering isolation is so important. And I think, you know, this Corona era has really caused so much isolation that it could be causing so much isolation that we don't know what the effects are going to be long term with people. We see the physical, mental, and I had definitely a lot of different side effects that I've had after recovering. And I've seen other people that have never really recovered well, and they're in worse shape. Of course, we know people that passed. But the social isolation that it did with people, and the fear that some people are walking around with is just incredible. Now, the thing is that social awkwardness is just an incredible thing, because, you know, it limits what we can do, how we can function in life. It limits what we can accomplish in life. It limits marriage, relationships. It could limit careers and everything. And so, you know, this is so important that we are able to be mindful of the effects this COVID thing has had on each and every one of us, no matter how. You know, you hear a lot about people being criticized that don't wear masks, you know. I'll be honest. Even today, I saw a program. I don't know if it was it was a news program. In a way, I would have liked to have put it in the screen, but it was basically a person that was hurt, that was injured because she had a mask on, and they had a race, and within the race, the coach, and she was a good runner. She right at the finish line fell, and she never had any health issues. The coach has been speaking about how can because it was some kind of relay race, and she was supposed to be a good runner. Passed out, fell right at the finish line. It looks like she did finish, but fell and definitely hurt herself pretty badly, unconscious. And they said that even the coach said that what it was the lack of oxygen. There are times I'm at work. I have to go to work, and when I'm in a room and I take this thing down, I'm like, oh Lord. Sometimes I see people, in New York City, live in New York. I see people jogging down on the West Side Highway of the FDR, and there's no one around them, and they're running with a mask, and I'm thinking, does that make sense? I know there's fear, but does that make any sense? You're stopping your oxygen level from coming into your body. If me at work, when I'm around people, I put this thing on, I have it on most of the times, unless I'm in a room with a lot of space and alone for the most part. But there are times that it just makes me feel like, oh man, I just wish I was working from home still, because the lower oxygen level definitely does that. But the thing is, it's just the fear, and I understand that people are out there, but some of it makes absolutely no sense. It makes no sense. I saw a video in, I think it was the Dominican Republic. Okay, I just saw a text here, little off there, but you know, it saw a video also during Corona, and some person had died, and family was so scared. People were on lockdown that they had to get other people to pick up the relative that was dead right outside, sitting on a chair, dead. And I just couldn't believe that. I saw so many things, what the grip that fear had on people. Now, I just wonder, how is it going to be for people? Some people are over it, and some people have pushed it back. And I like where there's places like the state of Florida. The governor there is just like, I'm not, and let me say this, even though the coronavirus is a real thing, if it would have been as severe as it's put out, there would have been people dropping in the streets, literally dying in the street. Many people died, and we understand that. We understand this, and there are people that are hesitating taking the vaccine, of course, because there are things happening with the vaccine. But the reality is that if it would have been so serious, I think it would have been people dropping in the streets, and I don't see that in the state of Florida happening. I just don't see it in other places that are more, media jumping on people and saying, no, you gotta wear a mask, you gotta do this. People are going around enjoying their lives. Area that I work in the Bronx, New York, I see a lot of people there, a lot of people that are running the streets that are doing, substances and everything, walking around without and they're fine and dandy, and they're doing just right, and they're doing just, and the fear, even though some of them haven't put it down, but a lot of them, they're just doing their thing. They're just doing their thing. And the reality is that some people are not being taken by this fear, but many have. And it's also dividing people. So the other part about fear is identity, right? Of course, when parents protect their kids, they may overprotect them. It may affect their full identity, who they are as people. And so one of the big things also that happened was, beyond the corona thing and the fear of that, is also the fear of what will happen with the issues that happened with George Floyd and all of that. But it also led to a separation of people. Like, I actually seen where a lot of friendships were lost I lost friends because I didn't agree with certain things. People that just wouldn't agree because they said you had to think a certain way and you gotta come on board against the police and stuff like that. And people, and you're like, no, I have family. I know people that are cops. They're not like that. And they're people that divided literally based on their race in a way, that's such a way that to me it was just incredible. It's like, wait a minute, can we reason here? It just didn't make any sense, a lot of it. And so it's just the fear of of and some of that wasn't really fear. It even got into, a lot of it just became identity. So much focus on identity that ended up dividing, and instead of uniting, and of course people blaming Trump for that. And no, it's just, they're people that are opportunists, and politically, socially, they'll get in and they'll take any crises and complicate the crises. Trump rallies, of course, it was supposed to be super spreader events, which they weren't. But then other things, big demonstrations, burning cars, police cars in other places, then that wasn't a super spreader event. So it's crazy how media twists them. A lot of people fall for that nonsense and divide over it. But the reality is that the progress that was done, it's just some of it has gone away, or people allow it to get away. I think of stories like West Side Story. I think it was a Latino and Italian that got together when they were not, supposed to be together. You got the Romeo and Juliet story, Capulet and the Montagues, and they were not supposed to be together. And guess what? It led to them killing themselves, literally, because there was no acceptance. It led to suicide. You see what the isolation did to, like, a Romeo and Juliet, that story, even though it was a story. But people go through this. People lose friendships over all this separation of identity politicking. And all of that is a trick of the devil, and people fall for in a way that just makes absolutely no sense. People fall for it thinking that that's the way that we should be living. And it is a shame, because it actually almost was divided the nation. And people saying it is divided. Yeah, there's some divisions, but the reality is that it's almost like the people that want you to join in on these things is anti other people, vilifying other people, vilifying white Americans, which is the craziest thing. Some of my mentors are people that were white, that helped me, that were a blessing in my life. And it's just crazy, some of it, some of the things that I've heard. But the reality is, but if you don't agree with certain principles, conservative principle, anti-conservative principles, then you're in the out. And that's incredible. I got to a point to say, you know what? If I have to lose people, then I lose people. Unfortunately, I didn't want to do that. I'm never that kind of person. I've never been that. But it got that bad. But a lot of that, again, is isolation. A lot of that, again, is trying to isolate you through identity. You identify here, and if you don't, then you're out. and so that is just, I think, the epitome of intolerance. Things that are learned that are supposed to have pushed us ahead as a nation is almost like you're going backwards. You're being forced to go backwards, and you don't comply with stuff like that. That's just incredible. But again, this is through identity. Identity can isolate people. It can make people sectarian. It can make them, we think about it like in religious institutions, that they're very religious and all that. Anyone could be religious. Political people could be religious. Or extremists. That's not even extremist. Any person could be an extremist, and all of that is damaging, because what it does, it isolates not just the individual, it isolates the group, and then the group becomes victims or whatever. In the Bible, there's a story of David and his son Absalom. Absalom did something that was incredible. Unfortunately, what happened was that he he killed his brother because his half brother, he killed because he actually raped his sister. And because he didn't see justice being done, he did something that was terrible. And but the thing is, what happened with Absalom was that he also became he stayed in the kingdom. He stayed there, but his father David didn't see him, King David, second king of Israel. And so what happened was that because he didn't see his dad, that isolation, even though he was among people, he was not out of the nation, it made him very bitter. It added bitterness to his life. Even though he was among people, he felt more isolated than he really was. But he also became ungrateful because he was not ousted out of the kingdom. He was still in the kingdom. And he was still, I'm thinking, for those days, still living pretty good. But that's what happens. Sometimes isolation, the lack of connection. But I can't blame David because what he did was horrendous. And what if he would have just gone business as usual? Okay, my son, what would have people thought? It's like, hey, everybody else that does this would have gotten the penalty of death. And taking him in and being close to him, I don't know how long he didn't see him, probably a couple of years or something. It was a long time. And so then, of course, Absalom left, rebelled, and then the story was that then he turned on his dad, overthrew him, but then it cost Absalom his life because he got in quickly but died pretty quickly. But you see, the isolation, what it did to him. Isolation can make you do stupid things. But also what he did when Absalom went away, the Bible says that he took that many other people that felt oppressed as well. They felt oppressed as well. They gathered around him. And when they gathered around him, they also banded together to overthrow David. Many of them, I think, did die during that time. But you see, in your isolation, you can find people in your misery. Misery loves company. And there were others that maybe were neglected. Maybe David was probably not perfect. We don't know those conditions back then. We don't know everything. But there are people that also do choose to live a life that is not right because of whatever. Or even tough situations fell on their lap. Maybe they didn't get an education on time. Maybe they were incarcerated or whatever. And that's another type of isolation. We've seen what this country has done with a lot of people that have been incarcerated. I've worked with a lot of people that have been incarcerated. Unfortunately, one of my own, my oldest, did more time than he should have for something he didn't do. And what it did to him, the isolation. Had another relative did all this time, friends that did 20 some odd years, what it did to their minds. Just incredible what isolation does to people. There's social isolation that could produce a sort of awkwardness, that is a social awkwardness that could be problematic. But also it can lead to rebellion. It can lead to falling into big temptations. It can lead to so much pain and hurt that it may not be worthwhile to go through it, in the sense. So that's why it's so important to see where these things can come from, not to fall into the devil's tricks to isolate you. And this corona thing has been a perfect opportunity to isolate people and make them kind of socially awkward and make decisions that may not be good for them long term. And so that's why it's so important to be aware like this. Parents that have kids, this corona thing got everybody stuck. When some of these restrictions lift in whatever area, take your kids, go out there, play soccer, do whatever. If there's no league, you be the league. You be the league. Make your own league, one-on-one. right? That stuff is important. It's important to get kids out, keep them safe, of course, but also be aware of the damage that this isolation can do if we don't counter this. We got to counter this. So there's a lot of people that are, weather's changing, they're going to be coming out. People are going to be taking vacations. I can't wait to take one. Be out there. Be with your kids. Interact with family. Interact with friends. Revive friendships. Good ones. The good ones. The good type of friendships. Because if not, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to be in a situation where this isolation can really make us or break us, because this is systemic now, worldwide. And there are many people that are feeling, you know what, we can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. Some people have gotten to the point of saying, you know what, this is almost like an experiment. It's a social experiment on people. It's gotten to that level where there's so many things happening. The governor of the state of New York was caught doing other things with women. It has been seen by many as a champion of the corona thing, and just writing that to a point that some people credit him, and maybe I might. But at the same time, I cherish my freedoms. Sad to see so many parks that you go to. Tennis nets taken down. Basketball court hoops taken down. Grills in parks covered with plastic bags. So hopefully things change, because people need to get out there and counter this isolation. Counter it, because this isolation can have long-term effects on people. We have to counter it, getting some good sunlight, some good activity. So I'm going to be wrapping up with this. How long have I been doing this? 38 minutes. Wow. And hopefully, I'm not even sure if this went. I know this went on YouTube. I am not sure if it went on Facebook. I thought it was going to go on Facebook. But for some reason, I did not notice. But again, this program is called Moral Politics, which means it says stream 2 there. I should have probably started stream 1. Yeah, look at that. Okay, look at that. Well, it looks like I had to hit both. So I'm trying to use this software here. So I'm trying to be very organic with this. A lot of work has been put into this thing. I call it Franken Studio. Moral Politics Franken Studio, which basically a studio, right? If you see here, Frank in Studio, like Frankenstein, Frank in Studio, Moral Politics. And basically, why it's called I would have loved to kind of put initially Franken, like Frankenstein, but you know how Frankenstein was kind of put together different pieces, different parts, unfortunately different body parts, right? It wasn't one thing. And then he came alive and functioned. So this studio is a collection of different things, different, to save money, different mixer, different kind of cameras, different kind of thing, different kind of lighting, different kinds of things, but trying to kind of make the best of it. And so I guess in the future, one of the things that would happen, I try to teach people how to do some of this, even though with this I was able to learn so much. Thank you for some of those that are out there. Epiphan Studios, different people that talked about lighting and frame rates and all these kinds of things. And I was able to take initially investment of things that was going to be more focused on editing. Then my youngest said, "Oh, let's do a live stream studio. Let's do a live stream studio." And lo and behold, then he chickened out on me. I ended up doing it by myself. But eventually he'll join in. He'll join in. He'll join in. He'll get there. He will get there. So, yeah. So it looks like definitely I'm live at this point. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if this is okay. Well, I don't know if this is okay. Okay, this is old stuff. I thought it was somebody live commenting. I'm really not. Somebody did comment something on my old stream that I had, but that's what I'll do eventually. It would be something I got to get better at. Yeah, so I may be the only one viewing myself now, but that's okay. Just yeah, it may be me or maybe somebody else watching. So I'm not sure if somebody else is, watching. And in the future, just launching this right now, testing it out. And as I test it out, I would get better at this and invite other guests and people like that. And so we'll see. The connection is excellent, which is great. I don't want to be, even though I was a little preachy there, in a way, I don't really want to do that. I want to interact, have people here. I'm going to definitely invite some people, some virtual and some, family and other people that will come by, tested it out and be able to do something, that's going to be powerful, I think, in the future. Very interactive, more interactive. And definitely, as you can see, I definitely have a nice little way of switching cameras. One of them went blank because I got a little hack going with that one. The other one, I actually have to press this right here, this little hack remote, because it turns off. And then the one that's there now, and it's a little Canon camera, and I was able to figure out, but then I forget, it's hard to know when it's going to shut down. Shuts down in 20 something minutes to 25, 30 minutes. And so if there's not a picture taken of something else, then it would be, shows a little bit of problems. Then I got to monitor it. That's why it went blank there for a second. But, the thing with this is that it would be, as you can tell too, whoever's watching, if you're watching, I'm talking with my hands. I do this a lot. This is something that runs in the family. We're not Italian, but talking with our hands. It's I have at least one other brother that does that in the family. Yeah, and then actually one thing that I forgot. Yeah, there is a way to switch also. Yeah, no, all the cameras I'm switching there. And then basically I am doing other stuff that's going to be switching, like the computer, like that. See, I'm able to do that really quickly. And if there's a video of some sort or whatever, I'm able to do switching as well there. But hopefully this was good. And it's first time that I was able to pull this off. And wow, being interrupted in a video here. So I'm going to be ending, and so God bless you all. And I guess in the future, if it's something, I'm going to, ask for people to do subscribing in the future, but this has to get better and going. And if you're interested in following, just let me know. Thank you. God blessing. Have a good night.